Welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. I'm Brad Thompson. I'm joined by the incredible Ryan Dutton, and we're going to dive into a big one today, Ryan, the modern man. So this is how fatherhood work and what it means to be a man has completely changed over generations. This is from dads doing bedtime stories to juggling work, family, mental health. We're going to try and unpack the pressures, shifts, and what it really takes to thrive as a dad and a man today. So strap in, mate. It's going to be a big one.
Agreed, yeah.
But before we do jump in, we're going to have a change of format, mate, aren't we?
We're going to trial a few new things, mate. Yeah, we've been having a little chat about like the podcast and how it's all structured and just being a bit more analytical. And I think there's a bit more value we can maybe bring. So there's a few ideas, one of them being a little health and fitness news segment. I've got a few things written down here. So every week whenever we meet up, we'll go over some of the kind of current news that's in the fitness world, health world. And I think it's good just to inform people on that.
And transparently, I don't mind talking people through my notes, actually. So we've got an intro, what's on your mind, fitness news, and then my favourite part, which is dad joke of the week. I've shoehorned that in, everyone. So, and then the main talking point, which today is the modern man.
Shall we start with a bit of catch-up?
What's on your mind, Ryan?
What is on my mind? Why do kids get so many birthday presents nowadays?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I remember when I was a kid, I used to get like tops 4 or 5 presents. One would be a big one. The one thing you wanted, and everything else would be like little things you play with. And I'm not in any way saying this as a flex, by the way, because a lot of the things weren't bought by us. But Harlow had her 3rd birthday a couple of weeks ago, and she must have got at least 40 presents. That's not, and I'm not even. I think I'm underestimating that.
Really?
Big, small, little. And how do you get excited about like your 39th present, your 38th present?
That's so weird you should say that, because we had Ted's birthday party a couple of weeks ago, and he was sort of saying, I can't wait for all my presents. And I'm like, it's literally not about that, kid. It's about like, and because he can verbalise it, we're having to sort of teach different values at the minute, which is a challenge, a challenge in this modern world.
I think my nurse, or Harlow's nursery, thinks Harlow's a bit spoiled as well.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah. Just because I picked up the other week and there was a bit of homework that was set, and it was go home and take photos of things that you absolutely love, your favourite things around the house. And she gave us a little sheet and an email address to send them over to, and I turned to Harlow and I said, what should we take pictures of? What's your favourite things? What do you like the most? And she went, presents. And I went, I just put my head in my hands and thought, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to say like something that you value, but maybe that's what it is. And I said to Amy, I think you just I think with Harlow, whenever it's a birthday or Christmas, she just loves opening new things. It's not the thing inside that she's valuing. It's just the load of presents that's in front of her. And we need to do more. I think we're still learning. I mean, it's only a 3rd birthday, right? So we're still learning about these things. But I think next year we said, right, when you can see by the state of this place, right, we just got an enormous amount of new toys and things flying about, and it's hard in the house as well to store all those things. You become like some kind of play centre rather than a home, and we do need to improve that. I think next year it's back to like just get us something big, and we might set like a 1 present rule. Yeah. I was speaking to a client and they were saying that that's what they do. So because they haven't got a big house, they can't afford to have like all these things around. They've got storage. So they say to the family, you should get a 1 thing. It can be 1 big thing, but you only have to get a 1 thing. So that might be the rule going forwards.
Picking up on what you said about that anticipation of like the presents arrive, she rips it open. I've actually seen comparisons to that's how gambling works sometimes. So people who get really into gambling, it's the anticipation of maybe a win.
Yeah.
That what keeps them coming back. So maybe why do we do that? That's a weird psychological.
We just like winning. Like human beings like winning, maybe.
Yeah, fair.
Am I breeding a gambler? Is that what you're saying?
No, that what I was concerned about raising that point. That's not what I'm saying. I just think it's a weird like human trait that we quite like that anticipation, don't we? It's a weird one.
Yeah. Anyway, what's on your mind?
On my mind, Ryan, very similar to what you said, mate, actually, about values, kindness at Teddy's school.
Okay.
It's something that we've really tried to instill in him. And yesterday I was sat just cuddling up to him when I got back from work. And I always like to ask him, like, what have you done that's kind today? And sometimes he just like passes it off as if to be like, meh. But yesterday he said, I joined in this little boy from school. I'll not say his name just in case, and I says, what do you mean you joined him in? He says, yeah, he was sat on his own and I like joined him in. And I'm like, Ted, that's amazing. I don't think he realises like the weight about what he's done there. And
But he knew to say it though, didn't he?
Yeah.
So if you asked the question of what have you done that's kind, and he said that, he knew it was a kind thing to do, or else he wouldn't have mentioned it.
And which is amazing because he comes home and he's knackered and he's grumpy and he's just been a bit of a nightmare. So anyone who's going through that transition, a kid starting school, they're just shattered. And me being a massive nerd, as you know, mate, I need to understand what's going on in his little brain. And it's conformity fatigue. That's what I've read, which is he has to behave all day at school. And he comes home and he just wants control. He wants to be a bit wild. He wants to let his hair down. And that's cool. But you still can't like throw rocks at the window and do like mad stuff. Like you've got to just there's still rules at home.
It's funny that I think Harlow's going for the same thing because she's in like the biggest room at nursery now and they're expected to be like, the example in nursery, and there's a lot more rules, and we've found that she's been acting up a little bit. And I think it is, like you said, conformity fatigue, where they're conforming so much to these new sets of rules that when they get home, they want to be like, nah, F that. I want to come home and do my own thing now.
Speaking of F that, all right, Ted's not said anything yet, but he's come back with this little bit of swagger, this little bit of attitude, because what they do is they pair up the year sixes with the reception to like settle them in, basically.
Okay.
So
that's nice.
Which is really nice. So Ted's like just running around in school playground, just talking to all big lads. And I can see him getting this little, like, don't care sort of attitude, which is, I feel like I've seen my future already. I'm like,
A teenager.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for the year sixes having to, like, on the first week back, snuggling with all these reception kids and, bed them in.
They seem to love it, though, which has been really nice, actually. 'Cause,
I guess it gives them a sense of, like you're the big kids now. Like, this is you've got a purpose here. Like, it's to kind of teach the next generation.
Yeah.
And you give them a little bit of power in that sense.
Whereas Ted's got like 4 or 5 11-year-old mates now. That's a bit of a flex for him. So that's cool.
Kids' parties are a bit weird, aren't they?
Yeah, I'm just like, I don't think they're going to want to do soft play, Ted. Like, we'll see. Ryan, the next section is going to take some getting used to this, mate. Fitness news. What have you got for us, mate?
I'm calling it the health and fitness news.
Okay.
I think health in there as well is like a big topic, and there's a lot of things that affect on as well your health as well as anything else. And I think the first one is probably, I would say, the biggest news at the moment. I'm not sure if you've heard about this. The headline read, Trump links autism to Tylenol during pregnancy.
I've unfortunately seen this.
And I was a bit like, okay, that's interesting. Has he actually sussed out why autism is on the rise? Because there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions around it. And it depends how conspiratorial you want to get around this. The biggest theory is that it's all from vaccines. So a lot of people become anti-vaxxers. I'm not in that kind of method of thinking. I don't think. I'm not kind of convinced enough. I think there's more good than bad in vaccines. But if you look at certain populations, especially in America, like I think it was I'm going to completely mess it up. There's a certain sector of people, what do you call them? The people who were like on horseback and carriage and...
Was it cowboys?
Not cowboys, no.
Horseback and carriage?
Yeah, they live like they're kind of 100 years ago.
Is it Amish?
Amish, that's right, yeah. So the Amish, there's never ever once been recorded a case of autism.
Wow.
Within their community.
Okay.
The only 2 times there ever has been autism is when those kids were adopted.
Really? Oh. Okay.
How fascinating is that?
I can't believe the first ever health and fitness news we've done. We've gone Trump. We've gone conspiracies.
Yeah. Know me, mate. I love a good conspiracy.
We just need aliens next week, mate.
Wait for my next one. I'm joking. There's no aliens, I promise today.
Trump is an alien. Is that...
But yeah, how fascinating is that? Like, never one case of autism in the Amish community. Yet,
that's mad.
I mean, our numbers in the Western world are growing like exponentially. So there's something there. I mean, whether there's anything to it, I don't know. Just to give you a little bit of an insight into it, the painkiller paracetamol, which is also known as Tylenol over there, is one of the most widely taken drugs during pregnancy, used roughly in half of all pregnant people worldwide. But today, when this article was written, the US Food and Drug Administration announced that it would swap a warning label, or slap a warning label, shall I say, on all paracetamol, citing its association between autism and children who and parents who take this. It's got a kind of fancy name, paracetamol. Acetaminophen. Does that ring a bell? And that's the technical name. Also known as Tylenol. US President Donald Trump also said that he basically came out and said, "Do not take Tylenol," in those words. Now, I take everything Trump says with a pinch of salt because I think he has, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. Could this just be a massive fallout with the drug company? And him saying like, right, let's associate Tylenol with autism and immediately their sales will plummet? Could it? There's so many sketchy shit that goes on. Could it be insider trading? Everyone's like suddenly sold all their trades. Could they be shorting the stock? I just don't know. I hate to get conspiratorial, but when there's money to be made, these kind of things get thrown out there. It might all be disproven. No one bats an eyelid in a year's time, but these guys have made loads of money. That's all I'm saying from a conspiratorial point of view. What I will say is the World Health Organization, which I also think is sketchy if you look at its history. I think it's in the back pocket of a lot of a lot of countries.
Can we get sued?
I don't care anymore. I'm just going to say what I want. The World Health Organization released a statement saying it emphasises there is no current or conclusive scientific evidence confirming a link between autism and the use of acetaminophen. I'm going to get that one day. Also known as paracetamol during pregnancy.
Do you reckon Trump just loves banter? He just loves fucking winding people up. There's a bit
I think the main thing with Trump is, and it'd be hard to deny this, I think he loves the limelight. I think he loves saying, I solved this, I did this. I mean, when he got into power, what were some one of the things he was going to say? He basically came in and said, I'm going to end all these wars. The Ukraine-Russia war, I'm going to end it. I'm going to do a very terrible Trump accent then, but I'm going to avoid it. He basically, he likes being the man who can sort deals, do things, get records to his name. I solved the autism crisis. I solved this war. I mean, but when you think about it, especially with the kind of Russia-Ukraine thing, you're dealing with a guy who's been in power for like 20 years in Putin. People think he's one of the richest people in the world. He never has to kind of obviously file his tax returns, but they reckon he could be a trillionaire.
What?
And when you've got someone like Trump who's in it for 4 years and again, see you later, how are you ever going to like out-muscle that guy? You're just not, are you? Do you know what I mean? He's the ultimate alpha male in terms of him being in power. So it's a bit laughable to think he's going to come in and with one phone call solve the whole war. But he likes that. I think Donald Trump likes that.
I think there's enough said there, mate, in terms of the state of the world right now, which I'm not going to lie, that's probably a cool transition into the modern man, but I'm gonna have to shoe on in the dad joke, mate.
I've actually not finished, man. I've got a few.
Really?
I've got a few.
There's a few.
I've got a few of these
Go on.
health and fitness news. I'm gonna each week. I think when we get together, I'll throw out like 2 or 3.
All right. This is teething problems, by the way. This is me jumping to conclusions.
I should have mentioned that a few. The next one is AI might be able to help predict cancer in humans.
I see that.
Yeah. So I'm glad to hear it's not all like being used to create like woolly mammoths and apes who were talking about getting boozy in the forest and stuff. I'm not sure if you've seen these reels.
I have.
So a team of scientists has developed a remarkable new approach to modelling how cells behave over time using a digital forecast, much like predicting the weather. By combining patients' genomes, it says, with a groundbreaking plain language hypothesis grammar, the researchers can stimulate how cells communicate and evolve within tissues. These stimulations allow scientists to digitally test how cancers grow, how immune systems respond, and even how treatments might work in individual patients.
This is what AI should be used for. Like, I don't want to see what a sparrow looks like with arms. All right? I don't know if you've seen these daft.
we could do a whole episode on AI memes.
Yeah. I want to see it being used for groundbreaking stuff.
I think behind the scenes it is. Yeah. What we're exposed to on social media is the most ridiculous shit, right?
Yeah, I agree.
But behind closed doors, I think there's some very intelligent, very kind of productive uses of AI for sure. I mean, even like, probably overused a bit with the chat GPT stuff. I even saw the other day that they've actually got a thing at the top now of chat GPT where you can change how it responds. So there's something, let me just pull it up actually, because I was quite fascinated by this. So at the top of chat GPT, when you're about to go into your searches, you can type auto, which is it'll automatically generate the speed of the response. You can type instant if you want it fast. You can type thinking if you want it to take a little bit longer for better answers. Or there's something called legacy models, and I'm not sure what that's about. There's different variations of it. But you can basically adapt it now to kind of give you a better, more refined answer. And so these things are all evolving before our eyes. But just going back to the AI in health, I think that's probably just the cusp of what's going to happen when it comes to, potentially helping our kind of civilization and everything about what we do in terms of a health perspective enhance.
I've always had this suspicion that you've seen what do they call them? Like the patches that you have on the back of your arms. What do they call these? Libra?
Oh, yeah.
Libra,
There's a Zoe one where it tracks your blood glucose levels and things like that.
I've just took on a diabetic client and she's really in the loop with it. And she's really fascinated the fact that everyday people are starting to use this now rather than just diabetics. Yeah. And she seems to think that the AI that's going to be basically implanted in back of people's arms or health data, that'd be pretty cool. Just to get a little warning saying your blood sugar is going to bomb before this meeting. Have a bit of something.
Yeah.
That might be quite cool. So it can actually sense what's going on in your body.
I think at the moment it's a bit invasive, isn't it?
It is, but
they reckon that one day, right? I've heard this online. There was a scientist talking about food, calories. He was very into kind of this testing of all this stuff. I think he was working a lot with some of the big companies like MyFitnessPal and stuff like that. And he basically said that one day they're going to develop a little kind of chip that you can swallow. It'll sit in your stomach and it'll register everything for you.
What, like all your calories,
nutrients, everything.
Yeah.
And everything that's in your stomach, it will register automatically.
Would you do it?
Yeah, fuck yeah. Make my life well easier. Yeah. Typing it. I use MyFitnessPal pretty religiously. I know not everyone's down for it, but if I'm going to stay in the shape I want to stay in, for me, being an absolute gannet with food, I like something telling me that, no, actually, that's kind of all you need. So for me, I definitely take it 100%.
As someone who has to have a high FODMAP diet or a low FODMAP diet, for people who don't know what that is, ping me a DM, that I find that really useful. Because it'd be really interesting to be like, your microbiome is currently sitting at around this. I think that'd be more that I think about it, that'd be really cool. Because deep down I'm thinking, do I really want to swallow a microchip? Because
everything I'd obviously want to know it's tested and it's not going to cause any issues, but it could probably tell you other things about what foods are good for you, bad for you, how that food's reacting in your gut and your stomach. There'd be a hell of a lot of feedback.
That'd be cool.
Last one, I promise. Head in a football linked with poor brain health.
I see that. I live it every day.
Recent studies have linked repeated. It's an American article.
Football.
Soccer. Recent studies have linked repeated soccer ball heading to poorer brain health, including cognitive impairment, memory issues, and structural changes in white matter, particularly in the orbitofrontal region of the brain. The frequency of heading correlates with these negative effects, with higher exposure associated with the worse outcomes, while short-term effects from a single heading session are While short-term effects from a single heading session are known, research is increasingly focused on long-term sequences of repeating headers. So they know that it's very minimal when you head it once, but what happens when you head it 100 times, 1,000 times? I mean, I was a defender, mate, so that explains a lot about me.
I got into defending quite late, so admittedly, I'm tall. I've got no direction when I head a ball, I promise you. Because for me, I ended up getting to the stage where I was a winger, then I had a growth spurt, then I went full-back, and then I had another growth spurt, and then they put me centre-half. By the time we were centre-half, mate, I could get up, but if I could use my feet, I'd use my feet.
Yeah.
Which, it makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? If you've got that repeated trauma. Special mention to Chris Sutton as well, who's done a lot of campaigning on this, and Alan Shearer as well, actually. They've both done a lot of campaigning on this, where I think Chris Sutton's dad suffered with dementia really bad, and Chris Sutton really dove into it about how it affects footballers. Alan Shearer did the same, and it's really frightening.
Yeah.
And you think about those two strikers, Shearer and Sutton, big, burly centre-halves. They were just using their head every week, and the science wasn't there.
The game's changed now, isn't it? It's less ferocious and much more of a, I don't want to say less of a contact sport, but it's not. It's obviously always going to be contact, but it's less aggressive. I mean, Roy Keane's not snapping anyone's legs nowadays, ending the career. Do you know what I mean?
But then, even though the football's way less nowadays, I'd say there's more force being generated. You only have to look at how hard players can kick a football now. I would not fancy that. Who was it? There were somebody against, I think it were Marcus Rashford took a shot at Fabian Schär when they played against Newcastle in Champions League. Knocked him clean off his feet, just hit him square in head.
Wow.
Fabian Schär had all his concussion checks, sent him back on. He were back down in 5 minutes. And this is just from a shot.
So it had to come off?
Yeah. Obviously, they've got special concussion subs now in football, which is brilliant.
Okay.
I said brilliant. But, like, fair play to Marcus Rashford. That's a big shot. Have you ever had a concussion?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Shit in it.
Yeah, my first one was in primary school, and then I had a few, I'm not proud of this, but I had a few when I was on my rough and tumble days, on my nightclub scene days. But yeah, you definitely feel a little bit weird in the head for like a good few weeks afterwards.
Shout out to one of my good mates, Dale. He once got a concussion. I think he got an elbow, like, side of the head. And he stood up and he says to me, Brad, what score? This is mid-game. I'm like, it's 2-0, mate. You've scored both of them. And he kept asking me. And I'm like, are you taking piss? And I thought he was saying it to be like, what score? I'm on for an hat-trick. Mm-hmm. And he looked really dazed. And I'm like, Dale, what are your kids' names? And he looked so confused. And he was like, I know I've got 2. And I'm like, oh, you're not good, mate. You need to get off this pitch.
Jesus, that's a good test, that one.
I rung his missus and she was like, oh, God, this is not good. And it took him a day, but yeah, he run a close observation.
Yeah. And it's all it takes sometimes is like a small thing. Everyone, you catch the brain in the wrong way, bumps against the side of the skull in a funny angle. Yeah. Sometimes it's the most innocuous things that can give you that concussion.
Never got his hat trick, for anyone who's curious. No, I didn't. He had to get yanked off after that. So yeah.
Good segue into the modern man.
Can I squeeze in my dad joke?
Oh, sorry, yeah, go on, dad joke. We definitely don't forget that again.
Gotta be done.
So many teething problems on this episode.
The inaugural dad joke, mate. You ready?
Go for it.
My wife asked me to pass her a lipstick the other day, but I handed her a glue stick instead. She's not spoken to me since.
Yes, I like that. Good man.
More where that came from.
Yes.
Join us next week.
Should we end it there?
Yeah, that's it. Done. Game over.
All right, let's go into the modern man, mate. I know you've got quite a few notes on this. Do you want to kick us off?
I have. Just want to fire a few quick stats because there were a few of these that shocked me, if I'm honest. So the first one is modern fathers spend over twice as much time with their kids as their dads did with them in the 70s, which is really, really interesting. That's twice as much time. 40% of men have never spoken to anyone about their mental health. How that study was conducted, I have no idea, by the way. I try and pick flaws in this data. And again, the obvious, which is, we are shifting away now from traditional breadwinner-only roles, where potentially women work a little bit more, whether it's part-time or full-time. And you can't help but feel like modern men are probably more involved in the household than what they were in generations gone by.
Yeah, I can see all those being true. I think the modern man has changed. And I think, number one, the modern man is different wherever you are geographically, right? Wherever you are in the world, the modern man changes. Wherever you are in relation to cities, I think the modern man changes. Rural men compared to inner city men. So there's so many variations of it, but I think we know that back in the day, people were used for their abilities, right? Mm-hmm. And men were just more physical. Men could shift more stuff. They could go longer when it came to physicality. Women were much more caring, nurturing. So roles were adopted based on strengths. And this goes right back to tribal times. Over time, and probably sped up more so in the last 50 years. Men have now become more sedentary because there's not as many hard laborious jobs. Machines have now been invented. AI's on the way. Things are coming around so that men don't have to be as physical. So sedentary jobs are being taken more by men. And I think this has got us to the point now where roles have changed, responsibilities have changed within the household. Right, you're not as fatigued and tired, so you might as well come and help me out with bath time and pick the kids up. And then over time, the whole generational kind of idea of what a modern man is has evolved. And I do think that with that comes a little bit more nuance in the way that the man thinks as well. So when you're out in the coal mines and you're out on the kind of hard laborious jobs, you're probably too tired and fatigued to kind of be in touch with your emotions and think introspectively. Whereas when you've got more time sat down, you start to become a little bit more conscious of you as a person, your environment, your future, And I think that kind of only sparks this kind of more, shall we call it, emotional man in terms of their thoughts. I think that's the kind of, in my mind, that's the timeline of how things have evolved in the past, let's say, 100 years.
I had a very funny feeling that we'd end up putting different words at the beginning of that modern man. So you've said like the more emotional man. I've asked all my clients I've had in last week in preparation for this, what is your opinion of the modern man? Have you got any thoughts? And the key word that kept coming up, mate, was domesticated. Which I thought were really interesting because let's face it, we have been like, you know, I know how to load a dishwasher. I can guarantee my granddad, if there were dishwashers were around, didn't have a Scooby-Doo, mate.
Makes me feel like a pet, that.
Yeah. And again, the elephant in the room is the domestication of the man has probably come from the liberation of the woman. And that is a really interesting dynamic.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty sure if we go back and be like, would you change that? Absolutely not. Like my wife and like your other half, Amy, they've got so many more options now than what they did 50, 60 years ago. It's such a liberating time to be a female, but maybe men have sort of lost their place a bit. Maybe they don't really know where they stand, where for generations we've been this breadwinner, provider, this, you know, going a bit primal with it, this hunter-gatherer, you know, seek and destroy sort of person. And now, is it against our nature to be a bit more caring, a bit more loving, a bit more... I don't think it is personally. I think we've all got that capacity as humans, but it's got me thinking. I'm like, that's really interesting how the liberation of the woman has gone hand in hand.
I agree. Oh, water's come in there. Maybe that was that one. I think that if you look historically into kids and how they develop, women generally, or girls generally, are more studious, they're more intelligent, they listen to the teacher, they're more obedient, they tend to get better grades. Like all girls generally across most schools will get better grades. I remember I went to a state school, then I went to a private school, and the private school was a boys and girls school. And it's fascinating at like GCSEs, looking at all the different results from the boys and the girls. Girls, just every single one of them smashed it. And they could literally be the ditziest people when you met them outside of school. But then in the books, in the lessons, in the exams, they were smashing it. I think girls are a lot more better at like retaining that information. They know what to do when it comes to education. And that, I think, has played really well into the fact that most jobs now are education based. So you need good grades to get good jobs. And if girls have got the best grades, girls are going to get hired more. And I think that's led into the fact that women are getting more powerful roles as well. And that's not like stigmatized the same way it was. And then when you've got women in powerful roles, better jobs, better incomes, what does that then do to the man of the house? All right, well, you just kind of be either the stay-at-home dad, which is quite the extreme version of that, or I'll be the breadwinner and you take care of more of the day-to-day stuff involved with the family. It's all just shifted, hasn't it? And I think it all is down to the fact that we've not got as many labour-based jobs and more roles that require thinking, intelligence and brain power.
I've got numerous paths I can go down here, but I just want to pick up on, you said about a stay-at-home dad there. Societally speaking, I would argue that people almost look down on a stay-at-home dad, but celebrate a high-flying woman, which is quite interesting when you look at that. And I don't know if that's just because it's so against the grain that women need this bit of a, you know, big up, you go girl. Which
I think it's across both sides. Yeah. I think a stay-at-home mum and a stay-at-home dad, for some reason, we don't give those people the value that they need. I think that's totally wrong. I really do. I think these people are raising the next generation of kids, adults, people who are in our society, potential, brains that are going to push us on. And to manage that and to nurture that and to understand your own kids and be around them and give them the time, care and attention that they need is more than a full-time job. There's no 9 to 5 with that. So I have no idea why the stigma around that lies.
Again, I can't help but feel like that is just, like systemic society, generational, gone by, almost generational pressures. I sent you a meme this morning, didn't I? Just the way that generational trauma unfolds and You know, the way that grandparents spoke to their kids, and then the way that our parents spoke to us, and then the way that we speak to our children.
I think that was just a diss on High Rocks, that man.
Basically, yeah, it looked like it. You are a hybrid athlete.
Yeah.
Which
the meme basically read, "You are slow, you are weak," and it was like a dad talking to his son, and it was that son then talking to his kid saying, "You are slow, you are weak," and that kid saying, "You are a hybrid athlete,"
basically. But it's true, that sort of generational getting stuff passed on. I tried to look for reasons why, and I don't know if you've ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
I'm going to say that again. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I didn't realise what a tongue twister that were. I can't help but feel like the hierarchy of needs has been so fulfilled that we're now looking for purpose. You know, we're looking for direction, making an impact. Whereas if you work down that pyramid, which is literally just food and shelter right at the bottom, all that's taken care of. And you think, even 200 years ago, mate, that was not guaranteed. So you probably didn't have time for this high level, intelligent, emotional thinking, because we just needed to live. We just needed food. So it makes sense if you need food and there's opportunities for men because of the roles that there are. It's just resource allocation. You know, if the roles are there for men, the men are going to go out and do it because that's your role, you know, in the household. Whereas as things have evolved, society's got a little bit more comfortable, shall we say, things change.
Agreed. And I think you mentioned this before the podcast, I think historical events massively change how men are and what society needs from men. And we've mentioned the phrase before, but and it's always like on the tip of my tongue every time I come to say it, worrying that I'm going to get it wrong if I don't butcher it. It's strong men create good times create weak men, weak men create bad times. And I think that is a great quote of how cyclical society is and how it mainly comes to fruition when there are kind of like wars and historical events that create really tough, pressing times where men have to then kind of just dig in and become quite rough and hard. And that affects the next generation. All of a sudden, as it's passed down over time, that man becomes a little bit less tough and less tough. I'm not saying there's anything good about being like a really hard-nosed dad, because those people often create a lot of trauma in their kids as well if you're not too careful. Like, you know, I was listening to a podcast today, right? There was a guy who was an ex-Marine. He was in the SS. And he was half Irish, half English. And back in the day, in the kind of 80s, do you remember that phrase, like, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish? Like, that was literally on pubs as you would walk in. So he was half English, half Irish. Didn't get on when he went to Ireland. Didn't get on when he went to England. And felt like he was never accepted anywhere. And his family carried this burden. They were very harsh and they tried to toughen the kids up. And that affected him mentally for years to come. And that was all down to the fact that, you know, there was these kind of little wars going on, and his dad had been to war. He was an engineer in the army, and it messes kids up, that stuff. It really does. So, and it takes generations to get that back out. And I hope now, if we ever had some kind of mass global event where there was a history-defining moment in modern times, we'd be able to keep that sense of emotion as males. We wouldn't just all go suddenly really hard-nosed and, you know, not care about kind of the good, positive things that being a introspective man brings to the table.
I'm going to sound like a proper pleb now, mate, so I'm going to quote myself. I put a post out last week and I had some really good feedback on it, which is why I'm bringing it up, which is all about acting on emotion. And I feel like in a world where people maybe have a voice and they use that voice, they probably don't filter it enough. They just seem to shout their emotions into the wind. And that can be quite damaging because that's up for people to construe it. Whereas if you regulate your emotions and really think about them, absorb them, think about what you want to do with them, you can actually move the world forward in quite a positive light. And but basically, as soon as you say something, somebody else is involved. Whereas if it's internal and you can keep it to yourself and choose how you let that come out, I just think the world maybe needs more of a filter right now. I'm not talking one of them shit dog filters either, what you see on Snapchat. I'm talking like just what is your mental model to realise that everyone's got an opinion, but what's the saying, mate? Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one. Not everyone needs to see it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's just, if you can filter that in a way that's very, what's the word? Very articulate. That takes effort, but it's worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you, mate.
What do you think is the effect on like the generations going forwards then of the modern man? Because one thing that I think is really worth highlighting is this sense of like how, because we all are influenced as men by role models as kids. I had my role models. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger was one. He was just a really hard-working guy, took care of his physique, was into bodybuilding. Absolutely what I loved when I was a kid. But there's this recent docu-series, let's call it, about kids and how they're influenced, and particularly young males in the adolescence. We've mentioned this before, haven't we? And how I think the people that were very influential back in the day were people who were in like the media. And it's always been the people who were in the media, right? Whether that was newspapers back in the day, whether it's TV shows, more recently social media. And these people are everywhere, like these people you can't escape, these polarizing figures with polarizing opinions that are capturing, every type of generation. But who's most heavily influenced by these people? It's the kids. So I'm fascinated to kind of see where the modern man goes and who trumps the influence poll.
Yeah. And,
is it going to be sketchy characters like Andrew Tate with their opinions? Is it going to be more, I'd love someone like The Rock, for example, to take more of the limelight. He's a very well-respected, looked-up-to person. Footballers, they take massive amounts of... they have massive amounts of influence over kids. It's fascinating to kind of see where that next generation of teenagers, people in their young 20s now, where they're going to be when they get to like 30, 40, 50-year-old, that modern man. What's that going to look like in 20, 30 years from now?
This is something I've thought about a lot over the past couple of years, because obviously I'm raising a young boy now. He will become a man one day. And it's quite scary when you look and think, who are you going to be? Like, what are you going to value? And me and Amy have said this a lot, like, he will be what he values. And all we can do is just set the table for him and say, look, it's up to you, son, if you choose to eat there. Like, there's a table we value. We can tell you what we value from an ethical standpoint, but you have to make your own choices. And he's going to be led by his peers. He's going to be led by, again, you said role models there. I don't know who he's going to look up to when he's older, but the more ever-present that I am, not as a domineering figure, but as an example setter, as someone who can be there as a sounding board. Because I'm gutted I didn't use my dad more as a sounding board. Like, I grew up basically without any grandfathers. So my dad's dad passed away when I was quite young. So did my mum's dad. So it's quite tough not being able to see that generation of older males. So I had my dad, but your dad's your dad, isn't he? And because he passed away when I was 25, there's so many more lessons like this past 10 years that I'd have just loved to be like, what were you like when I was born? Like, what did you think about? And just ask them questions. So the intention is to promote them questions for Ted to ask.
It's got me thinking now. I mean, what I would ask my dad and, pick his brains a little bit more. I think you get so caught up in like your own family that sometimes you forget to be that bit more introspective. So I definitely need to be better at that. But I'm fascinated by that. And I think you're right. I think the one thing this adolescence series really highlighted was the fact that sometimes you can have the nicest family with the nicest values, and you've just got this kid who's unfortunately just been influenced more heavily online, and you can't really get around that. I guess, you can instill values, but a young male is always going to follow his nose a little bit, isn't he? And unfortunately, that's the power of social media today. And I think we obviously are very aware of it, but what we're doing to like challenge it and stop it and limit it, and then it comes into like free speech, doesn't it? Like, what's free speech and what's not? Should these people be allowed to kind of view their opinions? I think everyone should. I'm a big advocate of free speech. But when it's affecting the next generation and society and the way our evolution of man is going, that's very tricky.
I had a really cool chat with Ted at the weekend. So, as you know, well into superheroes, Marvel, good versus bad, just like many young boys are. But I sort of asked him, he's like, right, you be the bad guy there. You do this. We're playing with some Lego. And I said, Teddy, why are they bad? And he went, well, that's just a bad guy, isn't it? And I'm like, no. I need you to tell me, like, why are they bad? Mm-hmm. And he sort of summarised that, well, they do bad things. I'm like, what are bad things? And he went backwards and forwards for a bit and then ended up saying, well, they hurt people. And I'm like, yeah, bad people do hurt people. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one thing. But sometimes good people hurt people too, in a different way. And I had to sort of try and teach him that you can be a good person, but still say something quite harsh. And that's not to encourage him to not, speak his mind and let people down gently and stuff. But it's a case of understanding that you've got to choose that sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's a very young age to teach him that. But he's at I'd say a stage in his development where he can be challenged with them questions and he gets some decent answers, to be fair.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think planting that seed, you don't know what that does to a kid's mind as well and how much they go away and think about that and the importance of that and the fact that you've just highlighted it and sat them down and spoke with them about it.
Yeah.
It does get them thinking. They might brush it off in the moment. I mean, how many times do you have a very fleeting conversation with someone, but there's some little nugget of a phrase that they said in it that makes you think, and you go home and you think about that. If you can keep bringing these things up, makes them very cognizant of their actions and their behaviours and why people do certain things, and they're understanding other human beings, aren't they, at that age, and what it is to have relationships and fallouts and what's good and bad. And I also had something similar with Harlow, where she's I've joked her out about it before, right? So nursery one time said to us, look, there was a bit of incident today at nursery. She got a kid in the headlock, a bit of rough and tumble. She's very, very confident, Harlow, I think too confident for which was 2 at the time, way too confident for a 2-year-old. Don't know where she gets it from. I think it's because she is just, we promote that. We allow her to do what she wants to do, have her own kind of input on what we do as a family at weekends, things like that. She feels like she has a voice, which I'm really happy about. But I think the flip side to that is she sometimes wants to enforce her views and opinions because she feels like they're valued. And she's like, right, I want to get that across to other people now. So if I want something, I'm going to try and get it out any way I can. And that's a bit of a tricky scenario as a parent because then you have to harness that. And that's why that's in a weird way why I took her to MMA, because I was like, you've got a power here where you are quite physical, Harlow. You're bigger than most kids. You're the average size of a 4-year-old. And that was at 2.5. You need to be quite careful with how you use that kind of physicality. So another situation happened, literally, I think it was last week, where she come in and she had a lot of bruises on her.
Okay.
And we know she's quite physical and she messes around a lot at nursery and she gets into little scuffles. Not scuffles in terms of fights, but just she rough plays a lot. So we asked her about it, we quizzed her, and she said she was kind of playing with one of her best friends at nursery, which is Timmy. And we asked Timmy who, what was the situation? What were you doing? She goes, well, we were kind of fighting over a toy, and then we were chasing each other around, and then we were throwing the toy, and then I threw the toy at Timmy. And I said, oh, that's not very nice. She goes, yeah, but, he was doing it to me, so I did it to him. And then it's the conversation of well, just because someone else does it doesn't mean it's okay for you to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's fascinating, all these things that you overlook as an adult, that you wouldn't even blink twice about, things you do as part of your value system they've got no idea about. And then you've got to sit them down and say, right, you don't actually, you can't throw things at anyone really. No matter whether they throw them at you, you don't retaliate, you don't react. You just, I'm going to sound like a right snitch now, go and tell the teacher and let them deal with it. Because, as soon as you take it into your own hands, you're creating problems for yourself.
I wrote down 2 words then, which is consequences and power. So I'll focus on that first word just because it piggybacks on what you said there. So power is an interesting one because from what I understand about child development, Harlow, she's been at an age where she's been told what to do. You're going here, you're doing this, you're going to bed at this time. She's autonomous now, mate. She's got her own opinions. She's got her own likes, dislikes, and she wants to express that power. We found that with Ted big time. Lots of hitting when we were going through probably Harlow's age, and that were tough. That were really, really tough. So essentially for us, we really express the consequences aspect. And I think this is one for the modern man in general now. I don't think there's enough consequences for not doing what you said you would.
Yeah.
And that does bother me. And we're always trying to teach Ted at the minute, what you do has consequences. What you don't do also has consequences. So if you don't brush your teeth when we tell you to, there's going to be consequences. You're going to get one story instead of two. Like if I have to ask you 3 times to brush your teeth, you're having one story. That's it. And he gets that now. And that's hard because he now understands that that's not to say in everyday life, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. But it'll instill that pattern in his head saying, oh yeah, that there are times where I can't just snatch something off someone because I want it. I know that there's a time and a place for that. There's another way to do it. And it's so complex. And I don't know if you've seen that just in modern life where maybe people, the consequences, like I'll use an example actually of the younger generation. Teenagers who are scrot bags, basically, the ones who go on rob, they're absolutely fearless because they know they're probably not going to get caught. Police are understaffed. Adults can't really shoo them in. So they're very protected.
They're also quite clever. Because they understand that, like, I'm a kid. You can't really do anything to me. There's a certain level of intelligence there, I think, with that, where they realise at an age where they can get away with it a little bit.
Yeah. But these are going to be adults one day.
Yeah.
And they might be in a bar and they express that same behaviour and they get a glass smashed over their head. I just can't help but look and go, how on earth do we stop that? And you can look at systems, you can look at, well, we need to tighten up on this, this and this, but how do we do that? Like you said, they're very intelligent, they're very protected now. And in some cases, well, in most cases, yes, kids and minors should be really protected, but it's tough. It's really tough.
We used to call them scallies.
Scallies
Back in the day in Manchester.
Scrot bags.
Scallies.
Yeah.
Townies, they used to be called.
Townies?
Yeah, that was a Manchester Berry phrase. But I think it all stemmed... Again, I'm not from that era, so I don't know. But I think these kind of kids just weren't around as much in, like, you know, the 1940s, 30s, 50s. I think... I mean, there's a lot more capital punishment back then, wasn't there? You know, going
belted. Yeah.
I know, and you know, is there some correlation there between there's not enough consequences, and not just consequences in terms of like you'll get grounded, you'll go to juvenile detention, like physical consequences, and it's hard to even like bring that up as a topic really because you know you never want anyone to go through pain. But I think weird thing is that the human body and the mind responds to pain.
Yeah.
And it takes me back actually to exercise and training a little bit where whenever I face something that's been phenomenally difficult and hard and it's really pushed me to my absolute limit, whether it's strength, fitness, I always leave there going, I don't ever want to feel like that again. I don't want that to happen to me again and be that difficult. What do I have to do to make sure that never happens again? I never have to go through that level of pain so that workout or that weight, whatever it is, feels that difficult. I don't want that to happen again. So I train harder. I do more things. And I put myself out there a little bit. And there's a consequence to that. I create that consequence artificially a little bit in my mind. But I put that there. But I think in my mind, it's pain that triggers me. When something's painful, it has an immediate response of being like, that's something I won't do again.
I feel like you just triggered a very painful memory in my head then.
Go on.
Which I don't mind sharing. Have I ever told you about my first week at secondary school?
No.
So I got in a fight the first week at secondary school. I was the most chilled, creative, laid-back kid you've ever seen.
I was hoping you were going to say, you came in there, shoulders wagging, I'm big knock around town, mate.
And because I was like the youngest in the year, I was literally the youngest in the entire school. But I was always the tallest, so it was quite deceiving. And we were playing on the field, playing football, and I megged this kid, all right? So me being cheeky, just like, you know, Meg's give him a little elbow. So he's thrown me in a thorn bush. Right? I was very, very close to the side of the pitch and he's like launched me into a thorn bush. So I've got up, got him in a headlock, told him I was going to do it, choked him out. He's gone down, all right? I'm sort of trained for this with martial arts. So admittedly, I probably shouldn't have done it. But again, I like the fact you told him as you were doing it, I'm going to choke you out. I am now choking you out. You are now getting lightheaded. Yeah, because deep down, I'm just like, look, actions have consequences, mate. If you want to chuck me in a thorn bush, this is fair game. As he's come around, I'm walking away, and next minute, my head's rattling. All right, he's hitting me from behind. I picked a fight, Ryan, with the junior boxing champion for South Yorkshire for that age group.
Oh, man, brilliant.
And the fact that he hit me from behind, and I did not have a clue what were coming. All right, I've walked off mega upset because I'm thinking, you absolute coward.
Yeah.
And, disclaimer, this person is now in prison.
Oh,
right?
really?
Yeah.
Just a nutter.
Yeah, just a nutter.
Yeah.
And I remember getting home and I had these 2 big cauliflower ears and I was absolutely dreading just seeing my mum. And it was horrible. And I remember talking to her and I talked to my dad. And my dad were like, look, yes, that could have been avoided, but you did what you thought were right. So fair play.
I feel like that was like the first UFC match, karate versus boxing.
Mate, the fact that he hit me from behind.
It's the first mixed martial arts on a football pitch.
But seriously, his stock dropped massively because I weren't even looking. Because he's rattled my head from behind, everyone's like, pussy.
Yeah.
Which, fair. Like,
especially if you've just been choked out by someone and you want to sucker punch him.
And he did deserve to be choked out, to be honest. And again, it was that weird reflective thing where I never wanted to go through that again. So I was very, in my eyes, I'm just like, well, that's done now. And I walked away. A big mistake. Like, if that happens in town, there could have been a knife, there could have been anything. So you learn a lot about your awareness and what your actions actually do. And you go, God, it only takes one punch. It only takes one punch. That could have just... I weren't braced for it. I didn't know it would come in. Luckily, punched like a bitch. No, seriously, that really hurt.
I was going to say he's South Yorkshire boxing champ, whatever he said he was. He's going to know how to punch it, you know what I mean? Hence why those probably cauliflower ears. But you come across those characters. And that's, again, as a dad of a teenager, that's really tricky, isn't it? Because that's the moments where you kind of want your son to stand up. You don't want your son to be, for lack of a better phrase, a bit of a pussy. Like, you want them to fight for themselves and fend for themselves. And it's one of the reasons, again, why I think I want to push Harlow onto the MMA stuff, because I want her to be able to know how to defend herself. But I do think that there's a line in the sand with it where they can get a little bit cocky, and that's got to be harnessed. And like, if you've got a lad who's going to a boxing class and has never really been taught or been, told by his parents that you can't do this outside of school, you're not allowed to go and hit someone, like, there's better ways around it, then it goes wild. And that's where you get someone who just uses that power in every situation in life. It's always fists up before it is thinking with your head.
I think it teaches you how to deal with setbacks as well. So transparently, for anyone who's hearing that clicking going off in the background, this is me trying to be very robust, right? Because I've just lost all my timestamps I've just typed.
Oh, have you? Oh, no, nightmare.
Piss me right
Mate,
off.
Don't worry, it's all good.
If you want to send me over the hard file,
don't worry,
I will go
good.
for that. But yeah, and again, it just gets you used to that, dealing with difficult situations. And like you said, just physically painful situations, which I suppose we're not as physical, we're not as expressive as men now. So what does that, we don't know what that.
But I also think as well, on the flip side, men need that.
Yeah.
The modern man needs physicality. Most men who I think have their heads screwed on a little bit understand that pain, suffering is a big part of our DNA, right? It's a big part of what we are as men. We've always taken on physical jobs. And I do think that when we take that away from a man, we go looking for it a little bit. And that's why fitness, sport, running, marathons, high rocks, CrossFit, strength training, all these facets of physical endeavours are being, they're going through the roof, basically. There was a stat I read that I didn't include in the health and fitness news, but I easily could have, that sign-ups to marathons are like at an all-time high. They've like doubled in the last 2 years. And I think that why is that? Because people like physicality. We're craving that a little bit as well. So as much as it's great to be in tune with our emotions and be more introspective and think a little bit clearly, a bit more clearly as men, we need physicality.
At the risk of going into nerd's corner now, have you ever heard of something called hormesis?
Hormesis?
It's essentially survival of the fittest, where this happens all over the animal kingdom, but if you are exposed to a certain stimulus, you have to adapt to it or you just don't survive, basically. So for us modern men now who have got, we're doing this in a lovely house, we're undercover, we're not in the rain, we're quite warm and toasty. Our bodies will adapt to that and they will sort of down-regulate from a weakness perspective if we're not careful. And people live like this. Like we forget how little of the population actually train, lift weights, because it's our little bubble. We see it all the time. But there's people whose hormesis has been this really cushy office environment, this nice warm car, this nice warm bed. So physically, what have they got to adapt to? So their bodies will just downregulate and just,
I think that's why as a person now you have to understand your makeup. I think not enough people understand that. They just give in to the whims of life, and that's why people get so addicted to social media, is because it makes them feel good, and they've not got that thing in their mind saying, it makes me feel good for a reason, because it's monotonous and it's played into every, everything that I love when it's excitement, colours, it stimulates me in a way that's phenomenal. I'm not cognizant of what that's doing to my brain. It's not making me think clearly. It's not making me more intelligent. It's actually, for a lot of people, the studies on people who spend more time on social media scoring lower on IQ tests. We have to be very aware of what we need as men. It isn't completely saying no to like physical stuff. And again, it's a bit of a tough, controversial topic to bring up, but this idea of like toxic masculinity as well. What's your thoughts on that?
That's a big question, that, mate.
It is.
I mean, masculinity, in my opinion, is very misunderstood. And in terms of what it is, it comes under different facades and different masks. There's an amazing book from a guy called Lewis Howes that's called The Mask of Masculinity. And it's very much breaking down what the stereotype of it is, but what it actually is. And we know when we see someone who's really brave and speaks what they're feeling, even if it makes them out to be quite weak, traditionally speaking, that's really brave. And I think too many people take the safe option. And from a masculinity standpoint, we look at the traditional toxic. Like, the easy option is if you're with a woman, you can physically dominate them. If you financially earn more, you could financially dominate, and if you want to, that's the easy option. It's very, very hard to collaborate and work as a team. That's much, much tougher to do. That's why it's toxic, because people take the easy route, and it's such a shame to see that people are that insecure in themselves that they think, I'm going to dominate this now because I have control over it. Whereas actually, they don't quite see the bigger picture, which is if you take the more difficult road, which is, yes, I could dominate this person if I wanted to, but what's going to happen as a result? I'm going to make their life miserable. If I have kids with this person, my kids are going to be conflicted. It's just not worth it. So, yes, there are psychopath males out there, but there's also psychopath females out there. And I think we need to be super aware that, that's the hard thing, mate.
The phrase toxic masculinity is very open-ended, isn't it? It's because there are undoubtedly certain aspects of masculinity that are quite toxic. But I think that phrase, it sometimes is a bit of a stigma, and it makes males think that they can't be too masculine as well. Because there's certain parts of masculinity that we need.
Yeah.
Like, we need men to be masculine in war, right? We need masculinity to protect and defend our families. We need these things as males to just make society run as it does, and give a sense of authority. But I do think that on the flip side, if it gets a bit wild and out of control, and we all have, but that's just different, I guess, male to male. It's more, a lot of it's personality types as well. There's massive parts of the female side of things that can be quite toxic, and females can be quite toxic in the way they are in high schools. Like, female girls are very well known for being quite bitchy, but we never call it like,
toxic femininity.
Yeah, toxic femininity. That phrase has never been, I've never heard that before, but you could say teenage girls show signs of that, don't they? Because they're very, like, mean. It's like horribly mean sometimes, and bullying is a big thing amongst girls. And I think there's either side of the coin, toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. They need to be harnessed and nurtured from a young age, I think. And again, it's values, isn't it? All coming back to that word, values.
I read an amazing thing from, admittedly, this is quite a polarising page to follow. Dave Hember actually challenged me on this when I said I follow the work of the Tin Men on Instagram, which is a guy called George. he's a huge advocate for men's mental health, and just it's a bit of a play on words from the Wizard of Oz. You know, the Tin Man doesn't have a heart, and that's essentially where he thinks society's going now. And he touched on something called the Peter Pan Man. If you've heard of this before.
Peter Pan Man, what is that? Where he wants to stay young forever?
Essentially, never wants to grow up. And you see this a lot. It's the stereotypical 40-year-old man in his mum's garage playing on Xbox, eating Cheetos.
Yeah.
And he really picks up on that as to why that might be. And
do you know I'd also put in the same category? Those guys who are like, maybe, I don't know, single guys at 40 acting like a beefer.
Yeah, maybe.
Do you know, I'd put them in that same category. Yeah. I just see it's like, oh, it's just a guy that never really grew up. Like, loved the party scene and just never really grew out of that like partying phase. The thing that you do in your 20s and maybe your early 30s, they just never got out of that.
And I think that's the hard bit, because if society's telling them you need to grow up, some people have got this rebellious personality where they go, no, I'm going to do this because I enjoy it. Yeah. And it's like, that's sound, mate, but a bit of a random one. We've been watching House of Guinness on Netflix. Have you seen this?
I've literally just watched episode 1.
Have you?
Yeah, it's cool. Right. I'm into it.
Episode 2, I'll not ruin anything for you, but the James Norton, who plays, I'm trying to think who he is now, but James Norton used to play the vicar in Grantham, all right? For some reason, I love James Norton. I think he's a great actor. He's not Irish, but he plays a good Irish accent. And at one point in episode 2, he stood on this bridge and he's talking about men of poor judgment. And I watched it last night, and in preparation for this, I thought, who are men of poor judgment? And I can't help but feel like men of poor judgment go against what they know is right. And when you think about what men of poor judgment do, they know it's right to try and make the world better, you know, try and have a positive impact. They know that shying away, keeping himself to himself, not really helping in society. They know that's a bad thing to do, but the judgment tells them not to do it. And I just think maybe the modern man needs to learn more about how to not be a man of poor judgment.
Yeah, it got me really thinking about that, the poor judgment and why men would do that. But I think a lot of it is for self-gain as well. People were willing to kind of not do what's best for the greater good for their own gain.
Yeah.
And I think...
lack of consequence again, mate.
Yeah, lack of consequence. It's just really, my mind's just racing there in terms of like, you know, how things have moved away from, like back in the day as well. I think it's tricky now because I think modern men are more family orientated in the fact that their roles are that way. But I feel like back in the day, men would do more things for the family rather than for self-gain. Whereas I'm not sure modern men are the same way. I'm not sure. It's so tricky to, because when you talk about a modern man, you're talking about what, 4 billion men across the world. Like you're basically categorizing a man into one thing, which is so hard and it's so difficult, isn't it? Really, when you think about it, you can't categorize one gender into one thing. Like every person's so unique in their views. No two people ever have the same views, values, anything like that. But we can only look at trends, I guess, can't we?
And I don't know, maybe people are more bothered about reputation and status now because it's never been easier to express yourself or have a message to portray. And I've said this on podcasts before, but never have we achieved so little but documented so much. And it is true, man. And it's such a shame. And that's one other word that I've jotted down here, which is comparison. And I suppose the comparison culture that we're in now in terms of curated visions of fatherhood and masculinity in particular.
Yeah.
If you look at what a modern dad should be, it's almost impossible. It's like you need to have this great job, you need to have a great family life, put kids to bed every night, you need to do school runs, but don't forget to keep yourself in shape. And it's like, fucking hell.
Don't forget to provide money for the family and put food on the table, and the pressures of all that start to add up. I think back in the day, the number one pressure was just putting food on the table.
Yep.
That was literally it. Men weren't really bothered about that, how they came across as a dad.
Yep.
They just provided for the family, and that for them I think was good enough. I think there's more pressures for the modern man in that you have to not only, you know, be a good dad, but appear to be a good dad. You have to be that person who's also putting food on the table. You have to seem to be quite emotionally intelligent. You have to be seen to be in shape and keeping up with the Joneses in every aspect of life.
Yep.
I think there's more pressures, and it leads quite nice into a segue on like suicides amongst men as well. How many modern men are taking their own life compared to back in the day? It's so sad. It is so sad, and it's almost even hard talking about. I think thinking about men that are in such despair that they don't want to be here anymore. That for me is it's emotional. It's upsetting.
And this is a bit of a, I suppose, a loaded question for you, but like, do you know anyone from school, from maybe any previous walks of life who have taken their own life? And it's really, really sad when you everyone just goes their own separate ways, and you think that is incredibly sad that you think that's the only way to get out of this situation. And for something that with the right support network, with maybe just the right chat, because we know, mate, just words don't solve things, but what it does when you speak is it helps you formulate things. I've always said there's a speed in which you can process things, and if it's just whizzing around in your head, that's going at 1,000,000 miles an hour. I think we have, what did I see? It's either it might even be 50,000 negative thoughts we have in a day, because his brain's trying to keep us safe. It's trying to protect us from dangers. If you never get that out of your head in the form of speaking or writing, if you think about that as a process, you think something, you speak about it, you have to slowly filter down your thoughts into words. And if then you want to write it down, you have to filter that down even more. And a lot of people just don't do that. Or maybe they just think, well, what's the point in talking? Talking's not going to solve anything. I saw the failure rate in men in therapy. Staggering, mate.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's really...
What's the stat?
I'm pretty sure 60% of men fail in therapy.
So they go to therapy seeking help,
Yeah,
wanting advice, and they don't, and they're not successful.
And when they're asked, did that solve it?
It's quite a high stat, that. And it does surprise me, because I've personally had it myself for various reasons and always found it to be pretty good. But I guess not everyone's the same.
No. Have you ever seen the Australian man shed project that they did?
Man shed?
Not seen it?
No.
So, I'm sure it was in Australia. I should have come more prepared for this, but they basically got loads of blokes in a shed with loads of stuff to fix. And what they found was men who were sort of stood side by side talked more. Like, I'm not going to do an Australian accent. It's like, right, Jeff, how's your family? Like, yeah, it's been tough, but we're getting through it. Wow, what's been going on? Whereas if we're like sat dead on, like the feeling, like if two men like stand face onto each other, it feels almost confrontational. Whereas if they side on,
it feels forced and generic and like not common.
Whereas if you see a woman do it, women are very like toes facing each other, very engaged, very like leaning in almost. If a bloke does that, they lean in and like cross their arms, you think they're going to smack me.
I always think about, if you look at like movies and films and TV as well, like whenever two men have a serious chat, they're always side by side, like looking out onto a lake, looking out onto a landscape somewhere. That's when, I think there's something about that, like when the guard's down, but two men facing each other, inherently it's confrontational, right?
Yep.
Immediately, like, we're facing each other. Maybe we should sit side by side in the pub, mate. I'm thinking more about layout now rather than facing towards each other.
I mean, we are slightly angled. Have you noticed that?
We are slightly angled, yeah.
We are slightly angled,
I feel like we're trying to get on the camera now for that reason.
But, I mean, we'll use that.
But, and then I guess you're right, yeah. It's interesting. And I think the fact that you've got jobs in there as well and you're making them work and do something productive, like it lets everyone's barriers down. Like we're working on a joint mission here. We're all kind of solving these tasks, and that's when men tend to feel more comfortable opening up. I've probably found the same thing as well. Like same thing, like if you play football with someone and like on the walk over to the pitch, you'll start having a little chat, but you're side by side.
Side by side.
Like, or walking back from the pitch, or, just sat in the bar afterwards, like, both facing towards the bar and the bar stools, kind of facing towards each other. Yeah, you're right. That's fascinating. Now, what's that called? The man shed study?
I'm sure it's a man shed project.
Man shed project.
Confident they did it in Australia. And again, it's an observation. I think I heard it on Modern Wisdom, actually, where he talked about, like, you can tell a lot about a conversation, especially from like men talking to women or women talking to men. I think it were a dating expert who we had on. I think he clipped it up, and I found it fascinating, where you can sort of see if a woman's a bit interested by like how they position their feet. And I'm just like, this is mad. And like, as someone who read a book on body language when I was younger, obviously that a lot can be misconstrued there.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's pretty obvious. But them softer skills where you're like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
It doesn't surprise me one bit that, because I'm ashamed to say it, but I read the book called The Game. Do you remember The Game back in the day?
Yeah.
So this was like this when I was in like probably in university, just before this book got released called The Game, and it was this dating expert's advice to blokes on how to pick up women, essentially. And so when you're in your like early 20s, this is like the Bible. Every bloke had a picture of this or a book of this next to his bedstand. And I think that one of the things that really was very obvious in what you said to what was in that book is, he said, when you approach a group of women, never stand face onto them. Always stand side on. And number 2, tell them how long you're going to be there. So if I'm going to say, sorry, I'm just going to 30 seconds of your time, and you stand side on, they're much more willing to be like, okay, I can spare 30 seconds. I know. Whereas if you're coming over and talking to them, they're immediately thinking, when is this guy going? Yeah. You're giving them a time, you're giving them a side on, which is very non-confrontational, which again all plays into this thing of like people let the guard down when you stood side on.
It's really interesting. Like I tell this story a lot, but a lot of my, I suppose, foundational development were done from my mum, my auntie, and my nan. Obviously, my dad were around, but when he was working, like 6-week holidays or whatever, I spent a lot of time with my mum, my nan, and my auntie. And you learn a lot from them in terms of like how to talk to people, what language you can and can't use. And I've always said this, I always feel more comfortable around women in terms of talking to them. I don't know, I just find it really easy. Whereas there's certain blokes who can come across with like a bit of a guard sometimes, and it's very hard to soften that sometimes, especially if you're intentionally trying to do it, especially in our job where you're trying to understand the whys and, okay, why do you want to do this process from a coaching aspect? Neil Strauss, The Game.
Neil Strauss. God, I haven't heard that name in ages. It was, Neil Strauss, The Game.
Do you want to hear the title?
What's the title?
What is it? He's put The Game. The 4 words after it is penetrating the society of, and then it cuts off. But the fact that that's naughty. Naughty that, Neil.
Yeah. Well, look, this book came out in a different time, right? You know, 20. How old was I? I'll have been 21, 20, something like that. So you're talking 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So I think it came at a time when you could kind of get away with it, and I think even today, if it was released, like it's a good, catchy title, isn't it? It kind of gives you, but that kind of book would be shunned today. I think it would, like, because women, I don't know, like it kind of objectifies women a little bit. That book, doesn't it, into a certain degree, to think that this is something I can conquer. And I think I had that problem a little bit in my 20s, where I felt like after reading books like that, women were objects a little bit. They were things to conquer rather than. And obviously, you know, I'm talking about 15 years ago, totally different mindset, different group of people. You realise very quickly that's not the case, and like women can't be treated like that. But I do think that books like that shaped a lot of young men. And again, was that like one bit of influence that is in today's world tenfold? Like that was a book that you had to read, just to sit down.
Yeah.
I hadn't read many books before I read that book, but I read that book front to back, and it was one of, you know, I think it was one of the first 3 or 4 books that I read. And I do think that it shaped my kind of thoughts around what a man is and what a man has to do, and we have to go and get women and conquer them, and there's a playbook on that. Then what if you take a completely different subject and you throw it in a kid's face every single day, or a man's face every single day? This is what a man should be. This is Andrew Tate telling you exactly what a man should be, where women are, where you are, where all the pecking order is. It's some other controversial character. You can see why it's much easier to be influenced based on the availability of this information.
And we are grossly unqualified to talk about dating in the modern world. But,
massively.
Oh, mate, I was speaking to my little cousin the other day about like the rules of dating now. It's like, they follow me on Insta, and then I always wait for them to message first, and she's explaining this is like there's like a hierarchy of contact where you can't just like swoop in and just talk to someone. Like there's certain almost steps you've got to go through. This is like a Gen Zer. Stages you have to go through. Like if you go in and just like a bikini picture, it's like a red flag immediately. If you go on their profile and be like, oh, she's in a bikini, I like that. Red flag. It's like a picture of her with a nan. And it's like, oh, he's different. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like,
there's rules to the game, right?
Yeah, mate, it's wild. It's just like a different digital age. And I'm like, okay, so the art of conversation is probably dying. We've both got to go through this pre-qualifying of, yeah, this is what happens to just, like me and Amy met literally outside the school gates. We were both the same age at that school before anyone dives in. But yeah, and I just remember that's how our conversation started.
Yeah, dating's changed a lot now, hasn't it?
It's crazy. It is crazy. I suppose to round up today, mate, unless you have got any more notes.
No, I think we've covered pretty much. Okay. Yeah, everything I want to cover today. Cool.
There's a book that admittedly I've not read, but I have listened to a few reviews of, which is The Fourth Turning, which is a book by Neil Howe and William Strauss, which was published in 1996, and it basically talks about the history.
I thought you were going to say Neil Strauss. He's segued well into the game, into this.
Damn Strauss is in the book writing, which is the history in 80-year cycles. And if anyone wants to check this out, please drop us a message, because it's an amazing 4-minute summary that I encourage anyone to watch, that talks all about, okay, how has history worked in the past 400 years, and they go back in these 80, 90-year cycles, which have just changed the way that we live. And there's 4 main cycles. The first one is spring, which is almost like the high. You've got summer, which is the awakening, fall, which is the unraveling, and winter, which is crisis. Would you like to have a guess, Ryan, where we're at right now out of all those?
Based on the turns,
the seasons, on the turns. Where are we right now according to this fourth turning?
Well, we're coming out of summer into what was that one after that?
So summer was, where are we? Summer was 64 to 85. So 1964 to 1985. That's essentially when people are awakened. There's this big social discipline there. Social rights are raising. Then in 86 to 2008, that's the unraveling. That's when a lot of things went wrong. That was when, individualism rose. That's when people became a bit more cynical and became a bit more educated. And right now, Ryan, according to this book, we are in crisis until about 2030, if the cycles are to be predicted.
Interesting.
And that means that,
So what happens after the crisis? Are they predicting that far down the line? Does the cycle repeat? Do we go back to... Yeah. So what's the first one?
The first one would be the high, basically, which is...
So we come out of crisis into the high.
So we come out of the high, which is more strong families, all right, strong family values. The culture's a little bit more innocent. Socially, we're a little bit more unified, with more emphasis on community. And that's essentially where Teddy and Harlow are going to grow up. And that'll develop a certain type of person in that, 80-year cycle.
I really hope that's the case. I really do. And I think... I pay a lot more attention to news nowadays, unfortunately, and for not great reasons. I do a lot in the stock market, so knowing where news are and wars and companies and things that are kind of quite popular, I want to know what's kind of going on there. But I do think that when you start reading the news more, you get a really good sense of where society is. Obviously, you have to be quite careful which news outlets you go to, but it's very, very obvious across everything that we're so much more divided. Like literally yesterday, I there's certain news sites I go on YouTube because I know they're more reputable, and this is definitely something worth talking about, especially for males as well. Nepal's just been taken over,
right?
And do you know who it's been taken over by?
Go on.
Gen Z.
Okay, all right.
Gen Z. I know it sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's 20-year-olds. Yeah. But I'm not kidding. There was a 30-minute documentary that I watched about a guy, an English bloke, who was caught there. He was travelling to Nepal and he was on his way to Dubai. And he was a YouTuber. And he was there for literally 12 hours and then this all kicked off. And it was an orchestrated thing. And Gen Z were basically sick of their government taking over their rights and their social media, and they wanted to ban all that stuff. And Gen Z, who are obviously big users of this, were like, no chance. This is going to completely revolutionise the way we interact and engage and things like that. And so they just burnt the Capitol building down.
Wow.
Their equivalent of the Houses of Parliament, they just burnt it down. And it was a lovely building. Nepal, not economically not amazing, but it was a lovely building. The president's house, they stormed it.
Wow.
And then he had to go into hiding. Like you're talking tens, I want to even say maybe 100,000 Gen Zers all stormed the capital of Nepal and completely took it over. I've completely lost where I was going with this chain of thought here. What we talked about the news and no, I've gone. What?
I think it's more understanding like this book, The Fourth Turning, talks all about where we're at in society right now. And if I can piggyback on what you said, mate, there's four archetypes that this video covers, which is prophet, nomad, hero, and artist. Millennials, mate, me and you, we're classed as heroes. We're the ones who have a sense of individualism, like we can try and make a difference.
Okay.
The Gen Zers, which are more like the artists, as it says here, they want to create new cultural expressions, reflect changing values and beliefs in society. So it's no shock if you look at that stat that they've burnt down this Capitol building.
Yeah.
And then eventually, Gen Alpha, which is Teddy and Harlow's generation, they're likely to be something called a prophet, which is, I'm sorry to bring it back full circle, mate, the list here is indulged childhood, all right, where maybe they've been looked after, activists for social change, idealistic, they want to inspire others to pursue a higher purpose.
Lovely.
This is going to come back around,
Like I
mate.
said, I really hope that's the case. I do. But I remember what the point was originally. It was divided.
Yep.
People are so much more divided today.
Yep.
And Nepal is no greater explanation and example of that, right? What's happening with protests and marches in London. I won't name any names, but if you watch the news, you'll have known what's been going on recently with certain groups in, London. And people just feel divided in their opinions. We've got these very political groups forming on either side. I feel like the left and the right are more divided than ever before, right? And there's very little middle ground. I feel like when I was a kid, people were quite middle of the road. I still like to think I'm relatively there, but I feel like I'm alone in there. I'm not very, there's no one around anymore. Like everyone's either massively this way or massively this way. I feel like I'm singing a song now, stuck in the middle with you.
I'm just imagining
Clowns to the left of me.
Jokers to the right.
Jokers to the right.
There we go.
I'm stuck in the middle with you, Brad.
I can just imagine us walking into a party and being like, oh, where do we go?
Yeah.
What's going on?
I know.
Which, it gets you thinking, and I don't know, I can't help but feel like the modern man, I hope the future's bright, mate. I hope that they really, especially Ted's generation, like, I don't know who Ted's going to grow up to become, but he's got options, and that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, that's all we can hope for. And hopefully that book's right. What's it called again? I'm definitely going to read that actually.
It's called The Fourth Turning.
The Fourth Turning.
And considering it's written in the 90s,
oh, was it?
Scarily accurate.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Okay.
In terms of what's unfolded
that gives it more, because if someone's doing it today, it's easy to look back on history, but to be predicting the future a little bit is quite interesting. Okay. The Fourth Turning. Guys, should we wrap up there? You ready?
Wrap up there, mate.
Guys, thank you for joining us on the Fit Dads podcast. We'll see you in the next one.
See you soon. Cheers, pal.
Awesome, my man.